welcome everybody to the Detectorists on the Detectorists, and we are here today, Series 2, Episode 4, and I have the wonderful Ellie, Miss Detectorist, with me again today. How are you doing, Ellie?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Katie. Very well indeed. From my island adventure at the moment, so I'm calling in from my island cottage. I've been given this day, and it's not mine.
We've gone international. It's gone very Eurovision.
I'm still UK. I'm just off the coast of Cornwall, about 28 miles off the coast of Cornwall.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And to get out there, do you fly? Is it a little plane or
It's a helicopter. It's a
Ooh.
helicopter on Friday, and I've got the same going back. So it's quite an adventure to get here. And it's a little archipelago of islands, sort of the most southwesterly point of the UK. So it's the last stop basically before the States.
Amazing. And is it nice and warm there today? It's been warm here in the UK, unseasonably warm.
Really horrible here today, and I heard from my family that you've had sunshine. Sometimes it's like that on the mainland, it's lovely, and then here we've got mist. At the moment, I'm under a cloud of Saharan dust, which came up in Europe yesterday. So it's been a kind of weird pink mist.
Oh, pretty, but weird.
Quite eerie, but quite exciting. Yeah, quite exciting.
Nice. So it's just us again today because Carl's still feeling a little bit under the weather. So hopefully we'll be back with us soon.
Okay.
But as we chat through, I'm very interested to get your take on this episode because it was a really awesome episode with lots of talking points again. We always seem to have the good episodes together, Ellie, where we've got lots to talk about.
Lots to say. It's probably more to do with us than the episode, I think.
I think you're right. So, as I said, we are now on season 2, or series 2, I should say, episode 4. And this one's titled Buried Past. And this one was on air 19th of November 2015. So we cut to Little Chef. We see the Little Chef. You remember those, Ellie?
I do. It's the last from the past, isn't it? I actually had to check whether they're still going, but of course they're not still going. I think very shortly after this program went out, they were kind of administration.
Yeah, I do miss them as I'm going up and down the A303 to and from Devon to see my parents. No Little Chef. But we start off, and Nance and Andy are at the services next to a motorway, and they've had a lovely fry up. When I watched this, actually, it was close to tea time. So it did inspire me to get my dinner on quick. I was like, oh, yeah. But I did look up, when did Little Chef close? And they closed actually in January 2018.
Yeah.
So they've been gone for a while now. Sad times.
Rest in peace, Little Chef.
Rest in peace, Little Chef. And the TV is on. The news is on specifically. And there's some lucky chap called Kevin Beale on there. And it made me chuckle because when you look up at the screen, or they're looking up at the screen, and it's showing this metal detectorist, it says Kevin Beale metal detector, doesn't it? Again.
They have to slide that in, don't they, on every single episode? But yeah, it was. I thought this was a really fun scene.
It's what we all do as metal detectorists as well. We see something on the news, and yes, this chap Kevin Beale had found loads and loads of Roman coins. So he'd found something like 350 silver and gold Roman coins, worth over £1 million, bought by the British Museum. He split it between him and the landowner, and it was only his second time out.
Oh, I know. I mean, I get the envy just watching someone else find one hammered coin if I'm out on a dig, let alone hearing about someone finding that, especially that they've, so fresh to the hobby and everything. But that's the great thing about the hobby, isn't it? It's so leveling. You can go out for the first time and find a haul, and you can be stood next to someone who's been detecting for 40 years, and you can be the one to find it. So it's, them's the breaks, I'm afraid.
That's it. You got to walk over it, haven't you? And you got to dig it.
He was very humble, I thought, the guy, because he didn't, he wouldn't do the dance on telly. He was like, "Nah, I'm not doing the dance."
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure whether you would or not. And I remember Lance saying a couple of episodes back, it's bad luck to practice your gold dance, I believe. So it was good that he just didn't do it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, we're announcing it now. We can't show our gold dances. I don't think I've ever practiced my gold dance. I have done a little dance, but I've never practiced my gold dance. It's going to be a very special one.
I wonder how that works with recording your gold dance then.
I think you got to set up. You got to like try and set it up and record. Yeah, because you owe us a gold dance. Did you hear the episode a couple of back? And I was calling you out.
It's going to be bad luck.
So
Well,
now, if you find more gold, you've got to do a mega dance because that
okay.
makes up for the one you didn't do for your gold posy ring. Oh dear. I think it's all right if it's a belated dance. It's just you can't practice your dance for
I
the
see.
first time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I've decided.
One for the
So yeah. So yeah, they're watching and they kind of look down and yeah, Kevin won't show his gold dance to the reporter, and then Lance just says, "Fucking bastard." So yeah.
so gutting, isn't it? When I'm quite regularly on the groups that I see people saying, I've been detecting for 10 years and I still haven't found my first hammered, or, and you think it is a lot about, you have to have that optimistic spirit, but it must get you down a bit if you try and you don't actually find that thing that you hope for. So
Yeah.
I feel it inside that he's, feeling gutted.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
bit gutted. And we've all been on those group digs where someone's found something mega. I think a couple of times there was one guy that found a gold sovereign, and we'd all walked through this gate into this field, and this one guy decided to detect walking into the field. And
Yeah.
there must have been about 35 people just walked over it, and this guy detected it and found the gold sovereign. We all turned around and went,
anywhere, couldn't it? It could be anywhere.
It could be anywhere. Exactly. So yeah, we all feel joy for our friends when they find stuff, but we all feel a little bit of envy at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's normal.
That is normal. So yeah, we see the TR7 driving off and the title song comes in. And then of course we have that familiar scene now with series 2 where it's the countryside and we're swooping down and we go underground and we see that lovely treasure just sat there by the knocked over standing stone, don't we?
Yeah.
We do. And yeah, we move into the second scene and we're back in the fields. It's nice to be back in the field, seeing a bit of detectoring action. And Andy is talking about having his not having a job interview in years. And he's wondering if he should just be himself, maybe. And Lance gives him a nice pep talk at this point, doesn't he? Good old Lance.
Don't be you, don't you? Be better than you. Yeah, I think that's a good line, that, and that is what you have to do in interviews.
You do, don't you? You have to go get yourself mocked too.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God! So yeah, he's saying, yeah, don't be yourself, mate. That won't help at all. And he wants him to be better, but he says be more sparky and less morose. That's his specific advice. He's got a knack of making people feel good about themselves, our Lance, isn't he?
Great to hear what your friends really think, isn't it?
Yeah. Just don't be yourself at all, you'll be fine. But Andy's panicking a bit. He's saying if he doesn't get that job, he's fearful that they're going to be homeless and they'll have to move in with Becky's mum, which must sound like the worst thing ever to Andy.
Yeah, that sounds like a good driver to do well in the interview.
And Lance is like, check in. Have you been reading up? Have you been, doing a bit of research? And he's not very positive about his own research, is he? He's saying there's not much out there. And at this point, there is the internet. So he should have been able to do quite a bit of research on where he's going.
He's a little bit lazy, isn't he, old Andy?
Yeah, he wants it handed to him on a plate.
Just sort of gets there on the day and hopes for the best. Well, yeah, that's pretty much what he does, isn't
it? Exactly. But Lance is really helpful and he gives him a couple of tips, doesn't he? He tells him that bridge is the national sport and thrash metal is very popular over there, specifically a band called Crack Dust. I didn't actually think to Google this one. I don't know if it's a real band or not.
I don't know if it's a real band. There probably is one now. If there wasn't before, it's a pretty good name.
Nice tribute band, yeah, doing some of the Johnny Flynn songs, maybe called Crack Dust. Who knows? So yeah, he's then asking Lance about Kate. Has he seen Kate? And Lance is all excited because on Wednesday he's going to see her again. He'll see her and she'll see the real him in his natural habitat, and he wants to make a good impression. So this is why he's cleaned up his flat real nice and sparkly last episode. He's ready to invite Kate in. So yeah, he talks about the Linda Lusardi photo at this point. Now,
Right.
we know that Lance had some questionable decor in his flat, didn't he?
He did. He's so 80s, isn't he? He's got
So
all the
80s.
trappings, So that's obviously a hangover from his younger days. A bit like
Yes.
and he's got these little hangovers, hasn't he, from his prime, when he was in his prime.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we all do that? I don't know if we all do that. Do we hang on to our sort of prime, our 20s, or whenever that might be?
My style for so long. I'm stuck in the 90s, I think, stuck in my old days.
I
I'm
think I'm
lady.
stuck in I'm stuck in the early noughties. And when I got my fringe back recently, that's what all my friends said. They were like, "You're just like you are when we met you now." And I was just like, "Oh yeah, maybe I am regressing." Oh gosh. Anyway, so yeah, he said, "No, it's already gone, mate. Lance is all over it." He's like, "No, got rid of everything out of the flat." And he just can't believe he's got a grown-up daughter. I don't think any of us can really.
No.
So yeah, Lance is like, right, I've got a bit of a signal, and he goes down to dig it, and he's pulling our leg, isn't he? He's saying he's found some kind of brooch, some kind of inscription, Latin, status quo. So he's obviously found a badge, and at
Yeah.
that point, Andy just walks off because he's like, right, we're not finding the treasure out, walking off into the distance, ready to get on with his day. But Lance is turned around. He's a different man from the last time we spoke, Ellie, isn't he? When we first spoke on the season, he was depressed.
He does seem a bit more buoyant now, doesn't he? He's got sort of reason to, he's a bit more chirpy, definitely.
Yeah. Kate has brought energy back to his life. So we go back, and Becky's on the sofa marking homework. She's doing a very quick job of marking everything tick, 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 isn't she? She obviously wants to get through it. And Andy's peeling the spuds. And then Becky pipes up asking Andy if he saw the guy who found a hoard in Warwickshire. Andy, of course, says no. He doesn't want to know anything about it. She says, worth $1 million. And it was his first time detecting. Of course, Andy gives the game away, going, second, whatever. He's still really pissy about it, isn't he? He just doesn't want to know. She starts laughing at him, going, you did know and you are jealous. He's like, well, no. I just can't stand it when other people find good things. And then he says he can't even watch Time Team anymore. He's so jealous of them. Bless.
It's a shame.
It's a shame. Time Team's back now, isn't it? You have to go on you have to sign up to their Patreon or YouTube channel, but they are back.
I noticed they had something going on there. I mean, I've been watching. To be honest, I hadn't really watched any, so I'm catching up on all the old ones, and they're perfectly fine.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Same information that you need. It's not the latest. Whoever, I don't know who's on there, but it's not the latest. Perhaps not the latest presenters, but I'm still just going through the back catalogue and loving it.
Yeah, they're good, aren't they? They're so good, so relaxing. I love all those shows.
Lovely, yeah. So it gives you that Sunday night vibes.
I was just watching Digging for Britain,
yeah.
And it was when they were around my area, so Alresford and Winchester. So I was like, "Ooh, this is all good information and research."
Loading well for yourself.
Exactly. Hopefully, all those Romans walk this way. Oh gosh. So yeah, Becky's saying, you know what, you'd be safe in Africa. You wouldn't have the distractions of Time Team and people to get jealous about. So she's still hinting, isn't she, and trying to G him up about the interview. They don't have Time Team in Botswana, she says. And then Becky has written a CV for Andy. So she's really ahead of the game, isn't she? She knows his pitfalls. She knows he's a bit lazy. So she's written his CV for him, and on there put that he can ride a horse randomly.
Why she would have thought of that, but it's like more the kind of thing you'd lie about if you're an actor, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. I can do anything. Unicycle, ride a horse, fall out of buildings. And she's put on there about a paleontology course, and he's panicking because he's like, well, that was only a little course. Didn't even get a certificate. And she was like, well, to be honest, I was struggling. She was struggling to find anything to put on his CV, bless him, because of his lack of experience. But she's encouraging him. She's like, grab life by the horns. And at which point Andy's been gazing lovingly at lettuce, hasn't he? And he just can't decide whether to wash the lettuce or not. That's his main problem in life right now.
Classic, yeah. Don't want to say classic man, but
single line of thinking. But yes, Becky's just kind of bemused by him. But yeah, we'll see what happens later on, more in regards to the interview. So we then go to the next scene, and Sophie and Peter are in a field, and they're sort of lolling about outside Peter's camper van. They've obviously had an overnight stay, haven't they?
an item now, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And Peter's asking Sophie how the tea is, and Sophie, being as honest as usual, she's like, horrible. And then he starts to try to explain what he's been doing with the kettle, but she cuts him mid-chat, doesn't she?
I don't like to think of what's been going on in that kettle, but I know in prison they use their kettle to cook food.
Mm.
I was learning about that. I saw some sort of live of somebody doing I think it was a TikTok from their cell, and they were cooking in the kettle.
Wow. What were
Yeah,
they cooking? Was it like noodles or something?
like something not good in like pilchards or something like that. It's like, God, for God's sake!
Oh, wow.
A cell with someone that was cooking pilchards in our kettle.
And then have fishy tea the next day.
Maybe he's been making baked beans in there or something. I don't know.
Yeah, one hates to think. I'm always a bit funny about kettles when I go to hotels as well. I'm always like, don't know if I want to use that. Yeah.
Go ahead and boil it.
Yeah. Don't overthink things, Katie. Just don't do it. Anyway, Peter was talking about the dirt sharks when they'd come into the pub on the previous episode, and they wanted to talk to him. So he's kind of got a bit of interest now, isn't he? He's like, oh, I feel a bit bad for dismissing them, and maybe I should talk to them. And Sophie's like, oh no, they're bad news.
Yeah,
At which point,
it's a weird request, isn't it? It's sort of, why would
yeah,
that's just weird.
Yeah, when he was so abrupt in front of the rest of the club, wasn't he? He was like, no, these are my friends. You can say anything in front of them. But now he's like, oh no, I might want to hear what they've got to say. So it is a bit weird. I thought it was weird. At which point, Sophie, having obviously spent the night in or around the camper van, pulls back like a bit of a blanket or something and finds Peter's detector, doesn't she?
Yes.
So it's like, I think you would have spotted that before. But anyway, we'll forgive that.
Spots the detector. It happens to be a really good brand as well. So
yes.
Which is unusual, isn't it? For someone who's just bought one secondhand, which is what he's saying.
Yes. It's
And then,
all a bit sus.
And then she notices his boots are covered in mud. And he says he hasn't been out yet and he doesn't know what he's doing, but he'll work it out. But obviously he has been out because these boots story, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think Sophie's onto him at this point? I think she is.
Yeah, she's sort of thinking something doesn't add up, but she probably doesn't know what it is. She likes him, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She's his hairstyle.
Yeah, she loves him and his mad hairstyle. Yes, she's got what do they call it? You're love blind. She's got love blindness. Something's going on there. The lust.
Yeah.
So yeah, Peter says, I think to distract her, he starts talking about wanting to tour around historic sites, doesn't he, at this point? And Sophie's like, oh, that sounds nice. And yeah, he invites her and she gets a bit excited and then they have a kiss. So I think he's managed to distract her enough that she's forgotten about the detective for now.
Good swerve.
Yeah. So now we are back at the scene. We see Russell and Hugh, and they are walking their way towards a very nice house. It's the mayor's house. So it's quite funny because you see Hugh's got like an arm stretched out with a bag, a carrier bag with something in it. And you immediately know what's in that bag. It's the ceremonial chain of the mayor, isn't it? That nobody wants to touch.
No one can touch it. Yeah, exactly. No one knows.
And they're on a mission. They're returning it, and they want to try and get permission for this field because they now know the field they need to go in is one that the mayor owns. So yeah, they go, and Hugh's saying he can't get the image of the mayor out of his head to Russell, and Russell's like, try not to think about it. Imagine him fully clothed. At which point they've knocked the door, and the mayor opens the door in his dressing gown with it flapping open, and he's basically in his pants, isn't he?
I love his Instagram account. He's really, really funny. The guy,
Yes.
mayor, he's a London, a Thames mudlarker and
Yes.
mudlark, and he's super funny. I think he's really
Yes.
witty, and he does
He
kind
is.
of, he's got a real actor voice and does voiceovers and stuff in his career, and you can hear it. Like his voice is that kind of classic English actor kind of voice.
Yeah. That
But he's
booming.
funny and he finds all these lovely things. So yeah, it's well worth a follow.
Do we remember what his name is on Instagram?
You know what? I knew you were going to ask that. I don't, but I know, yeah, your next guest will know for sure.
My next guest will know for sure.
Yeah.
So the door opens and the mayor's there in his pants, and Hugh introduces himself, and Russell says, "We found your necklace." I like the way they keep calling it a necklace. And the mayor reminds them it's called a chain of office, and you took your bloody time. So he's a bit annoyed with them because they obviously took a
He's
couple of days to
rude,
find
isn't
it.
he? They were doing him a
It's
massive
so
favour.
rude.
So he's like
Yeah,
well on the back foot because he's done something he shouldn't have been doing anyway.
exactly. Yes.
He should be being very, I don't know, humble.
Thankful, grateful, humble. Yeah, all of those things. Hugh says he thinks it might have a couple of broken links, and Russell says it must have flung off with some abandon. Again, with the imagery, I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't want to think about it. So the mayor's kind of pleased at this point. He says, right, I'll phone Terry and arrange the reward. He's kind of wanting to go back on his way into the house at this point, isn't he? But Russell interjects and he says, actually, your worship, we would, I like the way he calls him your worship,
Yeah.
instead of a reward, we'd like permission to detect on your field. And the mayor is like, absolutely not, absolutely out of the question. There's nothing to find there. No. He's very abrupt on it, isn't it? It's no like umming and ahhing. He's just like, no. So Russell's like, okay, we won't take any more of your time. Oh, just one more thing. And the mayor's what? And at this point that Russell brings out the big guns, doesn't he? And he's back to talking about perhaps we can call the local paper in about the story. It'll be nice to hear about your necklace. And he's doing a bit of the old subtle blackmail at this point, isn't he?
Yeah, a little bit dodgy, but he's giving it a go.
Needs must, hey, needs must. Hugh's reminding the mayor that it could go global because it's such a quirky story.
Not the way I'd suggest getting a permission, but anyway.
Oh dear. So the mayor's suddenly he's turned again, face like thunder. He's like, I see, this is Terry's idea, wasn't it? I always knew he was bent. There's a word for this. So he's now insinuating that Terry's a bent copper, isn't he? Or was a bent copper. So yeah, he's not happy at all.
Some rivalry, long-term rivalry going on here.
Yeah, big time. So Russell's like, is there? In response to there's a word for this, and there's a pause, and they all kind of look at each other, and no one says the word. But I said the word a minute ago. Blackmail indeed. So the mayor agrees, fine, you can have your permission. But then he says, I know what you're up to. I've been warned about you. Who's been there telling tales to the mayor?
Oh, I didn't hear that bit.
Yeah. And Russell says, have you? And then the mayor says, they're one step ahead of you, you know. They are one step ahead of you, you know. So who could this be? Maybe the dirt sharks. So Russell says, who is? And then the mayor just shuts the door. So that's the end of that. And Hugh's just trying to say through the door, you might want to give that a wipe in regards to his ceremonial chain. Ew. And then they walk off. So yeah, that's quite funny. But at this point, I'm thinking, oh, that's a lot more information, isn't it? Someone is ahead of them. Who might be ahead of them? And in regards to what, right?
Yeah.
So we are now at the interview, and Andy turns up for the interview. And I've mentioned it before, but I felt Andy's pain here because I left a job after many, many years recently. And my first interview, I was very nervous as well. You just don't know. You've got imposter
No.
syndrome with yourself, and you want to
And they
like,
didn't,
oh,
to be honest, they didn't make that interview waiting room feel particularly comfortable, did they? It was like
no.
silence, row chairs facing the, it was like not that friendly. It was a bit, I don't know.
No.
I didn't blame him for wanting to just do one straight away, just to have a bit of space. But it was
Yeah.
funny how he clocked the other interviewees and noticed things about them and thought, "Oh, I don't fit this. I don't fit the mold. I haven't got the long
Yeah.
beard." Although he did look quite unshaven, he hadn't made the effort, had he, to go to that interview?
I think he'd attempted to grow it out a bit, but yeah, he was looking, and a couple of them had like dirty fingernails, so it sort of showed that perhaps they'd been doing some archaeology and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, because the reception lady says they're running a bit late, he takes that opportunity to go outside, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Get some fresh air, pull himself together, but also go and rub his hands in loads of dirt so he fits in a bit better.
I'm not quite sure that was the best idea, but anyway.
No. And of course, as he's doing that, Andy being Andy, he looks up and you can see a very smartly dressed guy that you can only assume is a professor, that we'll learn later anyway. Clocks him and what he's doing. He kind of looks at him, doesn't he, with a bit of disgust, and then walks off. So Andy's like, oops. But then he manages to pull a few bits of clay pipe out of said pot that he was, dirtying his hands in. And we know that Andy likes to collect all the bits of clay pipe, so he whacks them in his pocket. So yeah, they go in and we are into the interview, and he finally gets called in. He's last, isn't he, as well? And it's very much like you say, it's like they're outside the headmaster's office. So it can't have been nice.
It can't have been
Sat
a nice
there.
experience. Not that, it can't be nice.
Yeah. So they're asking Andy what he knows about archaeology in Botswana, and Andy's like, yes, there is archaeology. He's not doing too good, is he? He's not doing too good at all. And then they start talking about Andy's thesis. He says about his thesis on the sterling hoard and gold talks. So that's quite interesting. And then the professor asked him what his views are on metal detectors. Again, of course, it's not metal detectorists, it's metal detectors. And Andy does a good job here, doesn't he, of defending metal detectorists.
He
I
does.
really liked what he said.
Good answer. He said that most metal detectorists are good people who abide by the codes of conduct and want to do the right thing for recording history and are really interested in history. And that is true. That is absolutely true. There's only, like with anything, there may be a couple of people who don't do that, but I don't know any of them. So I think generally we're a good bunch.
We are. We're a flipping good bunch of people, I can tell you. And it's that thing, isn't it? You only hear the bad news or the bad things. They're not going to put it in the news every day on the front page. Detectorist finds not a lot, but reports what they do find.
Yeah, exactly. Find the sensational story, and of course, that's what people remember, isn't it? So it's
yeah.
He did a good job, definitely.
He did a really good job, and he says, otherwise it'd be lost to the plough, which is often very true. So the professor, the doctor, then asks him, "You're not a metal detector, are you, Mr. Stone?" And he corrects him. He says, "Detectorist," and then he goes, "No." So he lies at that point, but he gets the feeling that
what would be the issue with that?
Exactly right. Yeah.
My understanding is that more recently that archaeologists and detectorists work hand in hand and help each other to, detectorists support the work of archaeologists. So
absolutely,
I don't know why he would have sort of made the insinuation that it wouldn't be cool if he was a detectorist. But maybe it's just a bit of an old-fashioned view because we are talking nearly 10 years ago.
Yes, exactly. 10 years ago. Yeah, these days you see as well opportunities where there's going to be an archaeological dig in your area, and they ask for volunteer metal detectorists, don't they? So they're actually seeking us out these days to go and help. Yeah. So yeah, I think you're right. So yeah, funnily, Andy is outside talking to Becky and telling her how terrible the interview was. And then the doctor suddenly appears behind him. And Andy's he's got nothing to lose at this point, has he? And he sort of asks Becky to wait, and he just explains to the doctor that when he saw him before outside going through a flower pot, he wasn't trying to pick up ciggy butts, but he was in fact picking up clay pipes. And the professor or the doctor asked questions at this point. And I found this really interesting because my knowledge on clay pipes isn't that good yet. So I need to fact check what Andy actually said. But he was just pointing out that 2 of them were Victorian and another one was older because it's thicker and the bowl was smaller as tobacco was really expensive. So that's
Yeah,
how he
you need
could.
to check that as well. So I have actually done
Mm.
research. In fact, I've been finding some this week on clay pipes because there's a museum here which has got a whole display of them because loads of them
Mm.
here on the beach. Obviously, old fishermen just chuck them over. They were like disposable, weren't they? Chuck them over the side so they will wash up
That's
on.
right.
Apparently, they were smoked by women and children as well. Pipes like that.
Wow.
Yeah. When you find one, you sort of think, oh, it's probably an old fisherman, but it might have just been some lady working in the pub chuck it out the window.
Yeah.
The dating of them and how you date them by their the gauge of the pipe and how thin it is or thick it is.
Mm.
But it was really interesting what he was saying about tobacco being very expensive earlier on, and then obviously as merchants
Mm.
start bringing things in, it's perhaps get a bit cheaper.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So that's on my to-do this week. Sounds like it is yours as well if you're going to go to that museum.
Right.
Um,
I would like to. I think it might actually be like everything else in the winter.
maybe in the summer.
Here, I think.
Oh dear. So the doctor's obviously impressed and he likes the clay pipes and he asks if he can keep them. And Andy says, yes, of course. And then the doctor asks him the name of the band you said you like. And Andy says, Crack Dust. The doctor's like, Crack Dust, I'll check them out. And then even before Andy goes to put the phone back up to his ear, because Becky's still waiting and been listening to this conversation the whole time, he can hear her absolutely howling with laughter. Yeah. She's witnessed the whole conversation and she's lost it on the other end of the phone, bless her. She's so funny. And then we are back at the club and the group are talking about, well, Russell's talking about what the mayor said. And then who's talking about back when I had an old Cortina? Oh yeah, it must be Terry. And then Sheila's, yeah.
Cortina and that jacket.
That's it. Sheila appears.
She's got a happy memory. She's so lovely, isn't she? She's so lovely.
Queen Sheila, yeah. I've decided she's the queen.
They are so lovely, like as a couple, just so lovely to each other and so supportive.
Yeah, so in love with each other. It's lovely.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's lusting over the past in his leather jacket. But Terry turns around and informs the gang they now have permission to check the mayor's land. So it's very exciting. And Louise is asking if it's ever been searched before. Lance says, no, it's virgin land. How much is there? 500 acres. That's all right, isn't it? Get in.
Meadow, isn't it? I thought they said, can we detect your field? But no. It's a bit more.
Seems like they're just talking about the whole estate now at this point. Yeah. So Sophie reminds them, she says, this is actually about the crash site and Peter's grandfather. And Terry's like, funny you should mention that. Has anyone seen Peter? And Sophie says she saw them this morning, and everybody sniggers because they know what that means. But Terry's holding something, isn't he? And he's like, I've got a bit of paper here that needs explaining. So he starts to explain to the group that it's the license from the MOT to excavate. And I'm just like, wow, that was quick. You can imagine these kind of things are going to take a while to get through, right? But Terry's like, exactly. It's because they've got a full record of the crash and there were no human remains on board. So Sophie's like, so it's been already excavated. Terry's like, no, nobody's touched the plane because there was no need. The crewmen all parachuted to safety and were captured 2 days later trying to steal a boat to get back away from the UK. So here it's all been revealed, hasn't it? Slightly. We were a bit suspicious about Peter anyway.
Yeah, something's not adding up. Sure what yet at this stage, are we? Seems like, not really sure.
So anyway, he's explained that all to the group, and they're kind of wondering what he might be looking for, as in Peter. They're suspecting foul play at this point. And then Varda, who I've been calling Varda all this time, but I apologise. Apparently it's Varda. She says gold. And Terry's like, as if he doesn't know.
The entire program. So it's quite
I know.
Like she's got like a big bit of speech here, hasn't she?
I know. It's
After she
amazing.
says it, Terry goes, keep it down. Let someone get a word in. And she's only just literally opened her mouth for the first time in 2 series.
I know. It's the first time she's ever said anything. And she's really posh as well, isn't she?
Yeah, she is.
So she was chatting on about this conspiracy theory about a German bomber that crashed in 1941, and apparently it was carrying gold bullion, but there's no proof. But that's the rumor. So yeah, Russell goes, is he lying? Is he a treasure hunter? So Russell's now like defense is up. Oh, maybe he's a treasure hunter. And Sophie's like, no. Vida just said it was untrue. So they're all talking about poor old Peter and whether he's a wrong one or not. And the doors open.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he comes in and they start to question him, don't they? Terry, in fact, and he plays. Where is he playing? He's saying he doesn't know what's being told to him at this point. So Terry tells him, and even Andy's going, Terry, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. So yeah, he's explaining that his grandfather didn't die, which is good news. And then Peter points out the obvious. Oh, but is it? Because then he didn't go home to his family. He abandoned his family.
Yeah, he plays it quite well. I mean, if that is not true, if it's nothing to do with him and his family, etc., he plays it quite well. He comes up with a quick excuse why that doesn't bode that well for him, and he thinks on his feet fast. If that was nothing to do with his family, then
yes, exactly.
His tracks pretty well.
Yes. So there's 2 lines of thinking here. Either Peter's being genuine and he doesn't know, and this is all news to him, or like you say, he's so devious, he's that quickly been able to come up with a story, which makes him dangerous. Yes. So anyway, Peter sort of goes off and Sophie goes after him, and she's like trying to defend Terry, saying he didn't mean it like that. But Peter's a bit upset, and he says, that he's turning it into some kind of circus. He needs to think. So he sort of drives off at this point, doesn't he? So then you're like, oh, kind of feel bad for Peter. Then we go to lovely Lance in his flat, and he's sat with Kate drinking coffee. And this scene really pulled at my heartstrings.
I know, it's so tragic, isn't it?
Yeah, poor Lance.
Yeah.
So he's explaining to Kate that he's a metal detectorist, and she's like, "You're a what?" He says, "A detectorist." And she's quite funny, isn't she? She's like, "So are you on some kind of register?" And he's like, "It's
a kind of register."
Oh dear. So he's explaining it's a hobby, and she's saying, you're after pirate treasure, asking him the best thing he's found. And then he says, actually, I've got something for you. And he produces a bear, doesn't he? A little teddy bear. When he thought that she was going to be born, he'd bought this teddy bear. And then he'd bought a present, which is a necklace that would have been for the first Christmas. And she's kind of like really taken aback. And at this point, it's like, oh, that's really cute. But Lance is kind of getting excited by her reaction by that, I think. And he starts bringing out another present. This was for your first birthday. This was for your second birthday. And then you see a shot. He leans into a cupboard. And when I saw inside the cupboard, and it was absolutely full of all these wrapped presents.
I know.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Very sad. So yeah, he starts bringing out all these presents, and Kate's starting to get a little bit freaked out at this point, isn't she? And she says as much. She's like, slow down a bit. And she questioned him, saying, you bought me a birthday and a Christmas present every year. And he says, yeah. And she's like, well, that's over 40 presents. And he's like, yeah. And he's really sort of proud and hoping she appreciates this, isn't he, I think? So she's a bit like, oh, slow down. And he says, okay, well, open this instead. And he gets an envelope and produces a check. And he's saying this is her maintenance that she should have got all those years. So it's obviously quite a big sum of money.
Mm.
She's saying, oh, I can't accept that. And he's like, well, it's yours. Just take it. Just take it. And he's getting a bit full on at this point, isn't he? He's really starting to like try and make her take these things. And
Yeah.
then he says, call me dad. So he's really pushing it now. It's what all he's ever dreamed of.
Yeah, a bit too much too soon, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Because, quite honestly, they're strangers still at this point, aren't they? But he's
Yeah.
excited.
He's obviously been
Mm,
thinking about it for all those years, but she's
mm.
definitely, so it's like they're at different stages of their yeah.
Yes, different
Oh.
realities. Oh. Anyway, Kate sort of leaves and runs out, and Lance is kind of confused and upset, looking bewildered. So yeah, she's gone off to get some space. We are now at Becky and Andy's house, and Becky's saying, "Oh, here comes the postman. Might hear about your job." And he says, "Oh, you should have seen the beards." And he's talking about it, isn't he? He's talking about the interview and all the rest of it. And the postie comes, and Andy opens a letter. Now he
Hmm.
opens a letter and looks at it, and then he folds it up, and Becky's like, "Is that the letter?" She wants to know, and then he plays it that it's some subscription thing. Do we think
Yeah.
that's what it was?
Yeah, I think he's hiding something there, I reckon. He's a
She
funny
must know
old.
him so well. She must know he does this all the time, and she
Yeah.
must know when he's lying.
It's really hard to be able to hide something like that, I would imagine, from,
Yeah,
so he's
yeah.
quite sort of sneaky sometimes, isn't he?
He is. I wonder whether it's just he wants control or he wants time to think about stuff himself
Yeah,
first.
sort of
I
think about
don't
it.
know.
Yeah, that's what it is, I'm sure.
So yes, we don't know what's going on there, and then we go to the final scene of this episode, and they're back out detecting. And I always feel very calm when they're out detecting again. It's always
I
very
know, it's so
serene.
lovely, isn't it? Just serene. It's all the natural kind of what do they call it? B B roll, I think they call it. The bits in between, the bits where you're just looking at a bee landing on a flower, or like, all
Yeah,
that. That's the bit that sort of really just calms, isn't it?
yeah,
Like,
calms us, and that's what
yeah,
we do when we're out in the field ourselves, I suppose, isn't it? I did that today, and I was just like, just noticing all the little things around me.
yeah, that's exactly it. It's very, very calming. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're chatting, and Lance is asking Andy if he heard about Rob McClint. He's dead, mate. All these people that drop dead around Lance and Andy, don't they? But this guy, he apparently fell into a vat of soup.
They're getting more and more comical, these deaths, aren't they?
What a way to go. So Andy's like, bloody hell. That's his crim. Of course, Andy only wants to know one thing, and he wants to know what flavour the soup was that
Yeah.
this guy fell into. It's all about the details, Andy.
Yeah. I've actually bought myself a tin of tomato soup, and it
Oh,
probably just watched this episode, and that was in my mind. Now I'm going to think about that guy when I eat my soup.
you are.
Just spoil it for me.
So yeah, Lance is imagining tomato soup, as is Andy, as is you, obviously, and you will be after this. And they were talking about him saying, didn't he have detecting shoes? Or that's the way they used to say
I
he
think
had
that's such a
detecting
brilliant
shoes,
invention. Can someone
isn't
invent that?
it?
That's such
Yeah,
an idea. Like, how can we
should
get
be
that?
able to
How can
do
we
it.
get that? Yeah, we should get
If
that invented. Katie,
if you
let's.
think about it, let's do it. Yeah, we'll do it. If you think about a 9-inch coil, if you strap them to your feet, like one on each side, a bit like snowshoes,
Yeah, and you want it to
and then
just like vibrate at you so no one else knows that you've passed over something, and then
yeah,
you just have to
easy.
hop there and say, "I'll catch you up in a minute, guys."
Yeah, just tying my shoelace. Yeah. Okay, that's a deal. So we've got so much in the pipeline. We need to do well, not virtual. We need to do school trip to the British Museum. We need to
Yeah,
do the naked calendar for
yeah.
charity.
Well,
And
you're very keen to do that, aren't you?
and and then now we've invented something. So we're going to be very busy.
Very busy. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Anyway, they're talking about detecting shoes. You used to go detecting, find a loose change on Wimbledon Common, and Andy's laughing, thinking that Wimbledon Common was a made-up place because of the Wombles. Wimbledon Common, made-up place? No, it's not. It's a very real place. Google it. And then it kind of pans out, and Andy's had the baby Stanley in his carrier on his chest this whole time, hasn't he? So he's been out detecting with the baby.
Yeah, that's lovely. I did think about that actually when I watched that again today. How like I started like I got a detector thinking I'd be able to do that with a baby on my chest, and I realised that I couldn't really do it. So I'm wondering how he's actually doing it. But it's probably a bit easier for a man because
Yeah.
because I just had a baby, I probably still felt like probably still had a bit of a tummy, and so like it's more
Yeah.
difficult. And
Yeah.
just actually the getting up and down bit,
Mm.
a bit easier if you're not just recently pregnant, maybe.
Exactly. I think you're right. I think you're 100% right.
I was like,
Absolutely.
oh, he's doing it. Well, why did I give up doing it? Why
Very different
yeah.
circumstances. So yeah, and he goes to get the old phone out and Google, but he's got no signal, has he? So Nance tells him to Google it later. And then we hear the music come in. And that was the end of that episode. So yeah.
Another good one.
It flew by. So now I'm just thinking, who is ahead of them in terms of searching the field that the mayor was referring to? Is it the Dirt Sharks
Yeah,
or is it Peter? Don't know.
gonna
Don't
find
remember either.
out. Watch the next one to see.
I know. I'm very excited. So we will be back next time with series 2, episode 5. And I wonder how far along the rally planning is going as well. I'm sure Sheila's already got her first vat of lemonade on the go, stewing somewhere in the corner.
Letter.
But thank you, Ellie. Miss Detectorist, lovely to see you again. And have a great rest of your time out there in the islands and get home safe and tell us all about it.
I will. Thank you so much.
All
Take care.
right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.